Welcome everyone, my name is Luca and this is my good friend Marco.
Hey, welcome! You are about to form a new random access memory.
And today's memory is about currencies and commodities. What's your take on it? What's your idea?
As every day, I start with a list of topics that we will explore over the podcast. The first question is, what is a currency? And specifically, what is the difference between a currency and a commodity? And of course, a brief history of currencies. Then the second question is, do you think that in the future there can be societies that do not use money, so that we will somehow go beyond money? The third question is, what are the cryptocurrencies? And are these the next step? Is this the future of currencies, or there are other possible futures for currencies? And among the possible future for currencies, there is a couple of interesting candidates. And it's the fourth question, which is, what do you think about the idea of using energy as a currency and time as a currency? Let's explore it together. Okay, so the first question is, what is currency? And to understand what is currency, we should first understand what is a commodity. And a commodity is something much older than a currency. It could be, for example, oil, could be gold or silver, could be grain. It's something, let's say, that is measurable, that you can measure and you can exchange for a really known value, let's say.
I would say, for example, in the old times, not sold, but whatever, cows or fishes, or, the starting of the stock exchange in ancient times where, I don't know, I give you 2 cows, you give me your daughter, and, this kind of thing. It's still done in some areas in Asia and, in some not so nice places. But I understand the difference. To be fair, I get your difference is I know what a cow is, but and that's the value of a cow, ideally. But I can assign to a dollar or a euro or a yen or a Hello Kitty, whatever value that I think is, relatable to that. That's your difference, right?
But I have to contradict you, because I think that a cow is not a commodity for the reason that there are many different types of cow, You can have a young cow, an old cow, you can have a milk cow, a beef cow, you can have a dwarf cow that it's just a pet or whatever. I think that a commodity should be something like oil. Do you care if your oil comes from Russia or Saudi Arabia? You don't give a shit.
Yes, you do, because the price is interesting in that way. And a lot of wars, not real wars, but, country wars, has been waged for this problem. Actually, recently, US economy was a little down spiral wars because Russia and other, Asian countries, whatever, were trying to undersell the crude oil to destroy, the US economy, which is based, basically the dollars is kind of based on the price of the crude oil. So yeah, it's kind of a problem.
Yeah, no, but yeah, the oil nowadays, it's kind of no longer a currency, because the price is becoming so unstable that it's hardly a currency any longer. But let's say gold was the perfect currency, Like before, people were exchanging, bartering the things. And then after that, they figure out that gold is a perfect commodity, because it's like you have this mass of gold, it has this specific value, and you can exchange it with everything. It does not spoil. It's value dense, so a small piece, a small lump of gold, it's very valuable. So gold
it's difficult to recover and to produce, or to get your hands on, like diamonds or whatever. I guess the materials with the more resources needed to procure them are the ones that are more valuable at the end of the day.
Yes, but diamond also is not a commodity, because it's like you cannot have 20 carats of diamonds. You can have 1 diamond of 20 carats or 20 diamonds of 1 carat. It's different things.
It's a bad example, but I was using it in the sense of
valuable.
You may want to choose something valuable is something that is durable in time, but not easily produced,
obtainable.
Procured,
yes, exactly. So gold had all these characteristics. But what is the point? That if I'm sneaky, if I'm fishy enough, I can just fill a little bit tiny drops of bronze into the gold and basically cheat,
Or just
So,
paying some rock in gold
yeah,
color and just sell it.
a very tiny layer of gold over a lump of poop, elephant dung. Let's say, yeah, you can do this. And so basically, what happened that the goldsmith became like some of them were really honest, so they became trusted. So everybody trusted this goldsmith. So basically, what they did, they figure out coins. So what are coins? Are a specific amount of gold. So it's like 10 grams of gold, and they are difficult to reproduce. So there is the emblem of the goldsmith on the coin, let's say.
I would say that nowadays, for example, euros and so forth, it's more of nickel and other kind of metals than gold. And funny story, you know how the vending machine kind of works? It's basically a finite state machine where based on the amount of money you give, and the amount of money you give is basically measured in the weight of the object you pass on the machine itself. It moves from one state of accepting money to giving you something to, finishing the vending. And you can recognize that your money is fake because each currency has a specific weight and a specific composition, which is why when the new €5 was first introduced years ago, some vending machines were not updated to be able to read the composition of the bill itself, and it was refused, even though it was a valid currency.
Yeah, no, but actually the bill, it's something entirely different. And I would argue that our present day coins are not really coins, but they are banknotes. Because basically what happens that the goldsmith prepare all these coins, but at some point the people were afraid that the coins would be stolen, So what they did, basically, they left the coin in a safe deposit, like the goldsmith create a safe where he kept all the coins or the gold brick, and he
get
just
back a document that was a representation of what was stored in the vault. I think nowadays it's in the bills. It's kind of still, this concept is still there, because if you read on the bill, it says you can be sure that the bearer of this bill has that amount of value stored in whatever bank or system or whatever. By the way, we Italians were the guys that invented the banking system, to be fair, and I'm ashamed of that.
Or perhaps the Jews living in Venice, like there is.
No, they invented something else. We invented the banking system. It was in Venice. Was invented in Venice by us, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
The Jews invented creative way to earn and sell and share money.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's the point. I mean, this banknote that the goldsmith gave. So the goldsmith gave a banknote. This banknote was the first real currency. Like the coin was still a quantified bit of commodity, let's say, while the banknote is actually a full currency. Then what happened is that in the beginning, every bank has his banknotes. And then over time, we developed a central banking system where every country has a shared banknote. It's all about trust. And then, yes, in more recent time, it was detached from, let's say, from the gold. Like you don't need to deposit gold anymore to create banknotes.
It's a little more, for state-wise, it's a little more complex, the connection between gold and currency. The connection is, as far as I'm concerned and aware, you can produce X amount of currency because you have X amount of gold. You can't produce more because you can't back it up with the gold you have. But in the last, let's say, couple of centuries, we had economies that were based on the amount of currency being present in the system. And if you are attached to a specific amount of gold, you can inflectionate the money, and you can increase the quantity of currency present in your system. So I think from the 40s or the 50s, they detached the currency from the gold to be able to inflex as much as they want.
Yeah, exactly. So nowadays, the currency, it's just a complete measure of, like if you have money, it's like a sort of representation of influence or trust or prestige. So, do you think in the future there can be a society that does not has money? like does not use money. Like the money will be like let's say will be something of the past, and there will be either something else in the future or nothing else entirely. Like, for example, if you are in a post-scarcity society, maybe you do not need money, you know, because you can have anything. Like you have a sort of a machine that can just print whatever you can ponder on the fly, and you have artificial general intelligence, and you can direct this intelligence to do work, also intellectual work, without any need for money. What about this?
I am on two, let's say, currents of thoughts on currencies and money and this kind of ideas. On one side, it creates this equality between societies and inter-societies as well, you know, the rich and the poor.
Yeah.
And that's, you know, a negative thing. On the other hand, though, the positive side, it makes things valuable, as in with, I don't know, a happiness or anything that is absolute. For example, what is the meaning of X is Y is not there? Okay, simple. Let's start from the simple. What's the meaning of light if there is no darkness? If there is always light, there, you know, it's an absolute. It doesn't make any sense. What is the sense of happiness if it's something that you always have? So, you know, if you're always happy, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to be happy. It makes sense to reach it and to be there for a while, but then, you know, to reach it again. So what is the meaning and the sense in doing stuff or things if they have no value? That's I started from a long way, and then I reached the point. What's the value in doing stuff if there is no value in doing them?
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, it's hard for us to imagine a society without money, because we are used to have it in our current society. But it might be that in the future we have either a post-scarcity civilization where you basically have always whatever you can imagine, whatever you can desire.
What a sad life. What a really sad life, to be able to have everything you need at the tip of your hand. And it's the same problem. It's the same problem.
Are you sure? I wouldn't call it sad.
Okay. No, but it's the same problem of the there is a concept which is called immobility by choice, which is you have so many choices in front of you that you do nothing because you can't choose. So
this sounds like the history of my life, actually. Immobility by choice.
It's my life as well. But
yeah,
I know you understand. But the thing is, if you have everything at the tip of your head, what's the point in, I don't know, waking up if you can have everything that you want for breakfast and lunch and dinner and go out and, you know, not buy, but have everything you want. What's the point every day of the year to wake up and do stuff?
I mean, you don't need to buy anything, because if you go into a shop, let's say, you enter into a bakery, you want a loaf of bread, you don't really care that there is a person to give you bread. It's like you just meet an artificial intelligence, and you just ask for bread, and the intelligence will have to give you bread, you know? Like
one bread out of what? But if you can everything that you want, as you said, for the cows, you know, as an Italian as well, you can have an X amount of different types of bread with X in the numbers of millions of combinations. So again, dealer choice. What do you choose? You can say I choose a different kind of bread every day, but at some point you're gonna get bored. So that's another kind of problem that I was saying. You know, boredom is one of the reasons why old people die. They have nothing to do, so they let themselves die. That's more or less what it is.
You know what I'm thinking? I know that it's unrelated to this boredom thing, but by telling me this, you make me think about a problem in a post-scarcity civilization. So what if one guy enters into a bakery and he asks for 10 metric tons of bread? You know, anyway, there are no money. There is no currency, so there is no way to pay. So basically, the artificial intelligence is forced to give him 10 tons of bread, you know? And this could be problematic, because if too many people do that, possibly you exceed even the possibilities of a post-scarcity civilization.
That's another problem. By the way, you can kind of do this thing nowadays. You can do it. You just have to enter the bakery with a big weapon and point it to the person it's at the bakery, and you can have even 20 metric tons of food without paying.
That would be so hilarious. Like one guy went there with a machine gun into a bakery.
Give me all your bread, man.
Give me 10 metric ton of bread. I would be like, okay. I mean, don't you want my money? No, there are no money. We are in a
I have only
scarcity.
bullets.
Yeah. So that's another interesting concept, like a negative currency. Like, for example, it's like if we are in a post-scarcity civilization, everybody can get whatever they want, but what if you want somebody to do something? You can you can encourage them with a negative, like, if you don't do this, I give you, like, yeah, it could be like this, like how do we treat garbage, for example?
We let them go to politics, I guess.
No, but aside of this, I mean,
how do you remove it from the system? I understand.
At some point, there is like, of course, you can recycle and you can be nearly perfect, but you will have that little bit of garbage that you cannot
over
get
the
rid.
Time it's gonna pile up. Yeah, I see.
And it's like you can basically assign a share of the garbage to the people who do something wrong. For example, you are in a post-scarcity civilization, but if you ask 10 metric ton of bread, then all the shop get filled and there are problems. You know, like, if you create problems, you become entitled to a negative currency.
You are having, actually, I'm thinking of, how do you decide what is the maximum amount of X that anybody can buy?
Amount of X?
Amount of eggs. I'll give you an example in a while. And how
are you talking about eggs, like chicken eggs?
As in the letter X.
Okay.
So let's say, how do you define how much bread you can buy daily? And if we don't have any money involved in it, is it gonna be the same across society, or are we gonna go back to I'm a rich person, so I get more bread? But if there is no money, how a rich person is defined?
Actually, there would be no rich person in a society that doesn't have currency. You know, it's like you can only be rich in terms of your prestige or your influence, in terms like with your close friends. You know, with the people that are close to you. Because otherwise, if you start to have prestige, let's say you become influential and many people trust you, so you have a lot of trust.
Make videos,
Yeah. I mean, if you have some sort of prestige, it becomes a currency or at least a commodity, you know, like the attention of others or the opinion of others becomes a commodity, so to say. So let's move to the third question, which is what are the cryptocurrencies, and are they the next step, so the future of a currency? So what is exactly a cryptocurrency? Can you make an example? I mean, of course, Bitcoin is the sort of...
It's the most famous one, but not the only one. Okay, so the basic idea behind cryptocurrency is not being based on a banking system anymore, but being based on a open ledge that it's only appendable. Okay, I'm going to explain every single term. Open means that everybody can read it without any kind of licensing involved. Ledge is, like a banking ledge, and basically is a log of exchange in value. Let's say person X bought this thing for this amount of currency. Person Y bought blah 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 for this amount of money. And only appendable, it's a kind of an IT term, but it basically means that you can just add something at the end of the ledge without being able to rewrite history of the ledge itself. You can just add and read, but not modify at random place. What it does is it ensures that every transaction is recorded, its history saved, it can be modified, and it's readable by everyone. So, that ensures that no bank is needed, because the banking concept is absorbed into what is called the blockchain, which basically is a chain of blocks that are appended for every transaction.
Okay, but so the point is that, if I understood correctly, you have a limited amount of currency, like this cryptocurrency.
In the Bitcoins, yes. In the Bitcoins, you have a top, and it's going to be reached in 2022 or something, which is like 20 million Bitcoins, whatever. But yes, ideally, you need to have a finite number, otherwise inflation is going to happen.
Yeah, but isn't it risky to have a currency that does not allow inflation? For a very simple reason: if the productivity of the society increase and there is no possibility of inflation, you will have deflation. So everything slowly will start to cost less.
Which is
And it's like
potentially not a bad thing by default, I guess.
yes,
Because
but there is the little negative side effect that the average person's salary will become lower, because if the money itself become more worthy, like the salary of an average person will gradually become lower. It's like
I see your
your
point,
purchase power will increase because the productivity increase, but it's like psychologically doesn't.
Yes, but
it's not so appetizing.
if your money can buy more, but you get paid less, it's a zero-sum game. You get paid less, but you pay more. So
I understand. I understand that the math. I mean, let's suppose that the productivity is stable and there is no inflation. Perfect, no problem. But right now we live in a world where there is inflation, so you actually can ask for a raise of salary, or you get a raise of salary. It's like it's a little bit helpful for the psychology of humans.
Human-wise, it's kind of risky, but number-wise, that's the best thing ever, because having things stable means that you can predict a lot of things in the future. So number-wise,
yeah.
by the way,
you can also. It's also interesting because you can measure very accurately the swings in productivity.
Yeah, you can analyze and predict the future in a better way, so you can potentially use it for the good and plan resource distribution for the best, or you can be a very fucking bastard and use it to gain even more. But that's human nature and not the point of this discussion, I guess.
No, the positive thing is that if the society becomes less productive, you realize it because you start to have inflation, and so you can really say, okay, guys, let's put our stuff together. Let's increase. I mean, it's a very positive thing because it's
unifies
objective.
People. Yeah,
it's consistent.
People.
I don't know how to explain. So this is very interesting.
Ideally, yeah. By the way, I never said why at the start the amount of Bitcoin, for example, is finite. Okay, there is a reason for inflation, but there is another reason as well.
Why?
How do you decide who publishes on the ledge? That's an interesting problem, right? Because if it's public and anybody can append, how are you sure that what you are appending is correct?
I mean, it's like when I append a transaction, like, do I have an identifier for every money?
Kinda, but the problem is how are you ensuring that you can't append like person X give me $2 million, for example, even though this transaction never happened? How do you allow the appending? And I'll explain to you in a while, but I want to see if you can.
I assume that this person X or eggs, as we said before, should be entitled to one of a finite number of slots, let's say.
It's not. Basically, how do you append on the ledge? It's a funny thing. There is, every time there is a transaction happening, there are a lot of miners, which are people or group of people that solve mathematical problems that of increasing complexity. The first one that complete the problem is the one that append the record. It's made in a way that to be able to fake a transaction, you need to have 51% of all the miners saying the same thing. That's the reason why to have 51%, it means that you need to have the power of 51% of the miners. And there is never been, and I don't think it's going to be ever, someone or a group of someone that can, in China you have a lot of data centers that are resolving problems and whatever, but there never been and there is never going to be. And what I'm saying is, at some point we are going to have problems so complex that nobody's going to be able to solve them. At that point we're going to reach the tipping point, and the amount of Bitcoins, it's going to be done, and then you are going to circulate that amount of money.
Yeah, so nobody can write any new thing anymore. So
no, you can, but you can just move what is already there. You can move between different
yeah,
actors,
yeah, yeah,
but
yeah.
you can add to the total.
Yeah. So just to conclude, I have one very last question, and it's about: is it true that actually this presence of miner that solve complex problems, it's an energy problem? I mean, it's an energy-intensive endeavor.
Fun fact: the first time the Bitcoin was created in 2009, they had to set the price for it, right? Nowadays it's tied to the dollar and whatever. So the first value of the Bitcoin was the amount of electricity needed to mine it.
Mm-hmm. So let's go to the last question. Like your last remark really lead us to this question, which is, what do you think about the idea of using energy or time as a currency? This it's like we had these different currencies. So the banknote, we went as far as to do the cryptocurrency, etc. But actually, it seems that energy could be a currency. I mean, of course, energy, it's more a commodity for us, but it's not it's not a commodity like gold that have nearly no use value, which is also strange, actually, but we can talk about this later. And it's not even like oil or natural gas, which has a very narrow use value. If you take energy,
petrol and burning people, I guess.
No, it's the use value of oil. It's I mean, it's like related to energy, but it's narrow. You know, you can make gasoline, you can make plastics, you can make chemicals, pharmaceutical, but it's still a limited scope. But if you trade in energy, energy can really do anything. You know, I mean, nowadays, whatever you need to do, you always need energy. We are completely we cannot heat our homes, we cannot prepare and process our food, we cannot run our computers. So it's like also our intellectual work nowadays would be worthless without energy. So why don't we use energy as a currency? You know, in the beginning, Bitcoin was tied, the value was tied to the energy it consumed to do the calculation. But why don't we use directly the energy? So
because it's gonna be an auto-referential circle. If you have a currency that is energy-based, but to have energy you have to buy it, it's kind of a auto-referencing cycle if you think about it.
Yeah, maybe there is something less, because you kind of go back to a commodity. You know, you lose a currency and you back to a commodity. Like there is like, for some reason at some point we decided to abandon commodities and have currencies. It's like
I guess it was for simplicity's sake and to solve wars, I guess.
What do you mean solve wars?
Because a currency, it's a more stable way of having wealth as opposed to a commodity. So it stabilizes a lot of conflicts that may happen because people, if you have a rich and poor, ideally you have a more unstable situation where rich people are rich, poor people are poor, and the extreme are increasing in time. But that stabilizes, the society. Whereas if you don't have rich or poor people, people are always fighting with each other. And I think one of the reasons why we have the law is to have that, because without the law, we just kill each other daily. So it's one of the constraints that we gave ourselves to not be like primitive people in caves killing each other for food.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily agree that without law we would kill each other. I mean, there will be somebody who kill the others, but eventually over time, this somebody will become the law. If there is, if you are,
it's going to be called dread, and that's it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like if you have a society where there is no law and there are some violent individual who terrorize everybody else, at the end of the day, these terrorists become the state. They become the law, and maybe
Son of anarchy. Sorry.
Maybe it happened like this at some point. Like the first.
I think so. It's history cyclical, so it may have happened at some point in time. I think in the tribal situation.
Yeah, I mean,
in Africa, the stronger person, the most violent person is the one that, have you ever seen the movie Black Panther, which is a very bad movie, but where the society in Wakanda, which is a fake country in Africa, they have this vibranium, which is, the Nutella of reality. With vibranium, you can do anything. And they are so advanced. They have like rockets, space shuttles, and whatever. And they have like a super evolved society with buildings that are very cool, but at the top you have like a primitive kind of covering on the top. And their king, the person that drives them.
You mean the roof is primitive? No,
the roof is primitive. It's like very, I would say, how would you imagine Africa nowadays? But it's like the Empire State Building, but with a top of a stray
roof.
Yeah, exactly. And how their society is driven is they have a king, and the king is basically the one that can dish the strongest eat. They have every time a king dies, they have a competition. And the strongest one, the one that can deal the more damage to the remaining ones, is the king, which means that you can have a modern society, but with a very brutal and very primitive kind of government. That's why it's a very bad movie. It's not because there are black people there. I'm not saying that black lives don't matter. I'm just saying that they are fucking piece of shit. And it's not because they're black. It's because they're piece of shit.
It's not realistic, I would say. I mean, if a society that is advanced start to select the leader with the meritocracy based on physical strength, over time it will not be advanced anymore. Like
that's why it's a bad movie.
Enter into a crisis probably.
Yeah, that's true. But that's what I'm saying. It's potentially a possible future. I'm not saying it's a good one. It's a potential future also. What I was thinking is, let's say another thing that you said that it struck my mind is you said energy and another kind
of time. Yeah. For example, I mean, I wanted to conclude on that. I mean, we talk about energy as a currency, but what many times we say, especially in Italian, we have a way of saying time is money. So what if we really make so that time is money? Like, do you think it could work, or it's balloony?
Ideally, it's a possible and workable idea if, and it's a big if you're able to share time. I'll explain. If you're able to move the time allocated to you in somehow. So let's say I paint your house and you have to pay me, right?
I pay you in time.
Each of us has an amount of time, not a set, but an amount of time that it's starting from when you're born. And when I have to pay you, I just give you some time based on some scale. The problem that I see here is how if you can increase the time that you are allowed to live on Earth, how do you stop people being immortal, for one? And a good movie that is called In Time, that's a funny one. It's based on the concept that, people are immortal. Okay, humanity was able to create a way to not die and be able to be immortal. But this one was a problem in itself, because if nobody dies, Earth is kind of
overcrowded.
You have overcrowded people. So the way they solve the problem is genetically imprinting that you can just reach 29 years old of life as a starting point from when you're born. And throughout your life, you can buy, exchange, or whatever, or steal time. So the rich people are the ones that are on their clock. They have like hundreds of years of life, and and they store in banks time. So if you rob a bank, you can live forever potentially. So
very interesting.
I guess it's a possible solution. But what's your idea? What's your thought on this movie, or the idea of this movie? Actually,
I didn't see the movie, and I'm gonna see it very soon. So it's time to say goodbye. Thank you for staying with us.
Thank you very much.
We wish you a happy week.
And to see you next week with a new random access memory. Stay frosty and safe.